All right.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 Baseball coaches. Welcome. Yes, this is Coach Bo. I'm fired up to be here. Episode 46. Before we jump into episode 46, let's review 45. Main goal for youth and high school coaches. The main goal, develop hardworking, confident, disciplined human beings through a platform, through an environment, a sport that should be fun and enjoyable for all. So you're developing hardworking, confident, disciplined human beings in an environment that should be fun. That's the greatest thing about youth sports. And in my opinion, youth sports has a huge advantage over the school system. And I've spent 15 years in the school system. It has a huge advantage over that because it provides, I think, an environment that's just flat out more fun for youth and an environment that inherently is more fun, especially for young boys that want to get out there and compete, young ladies that want to get out there and compete, have fun, play a game. Out there, they're running around, they're having a good time. But it's important that every single time us coaches step out on the field, youth coaches and high school coaches. The reason I say youth and high school and not college and pro, I think once you get to college and pro, it's completely understandable that the focus shifts heavily towards development and getting prepared insofar as like it's a job or it could be a career. But until a player is proven that they can play and get to the college level and really has that potential, the true potential, or a true path, they're close to playing professional baseball. But for the high school coaches, most of the players you're dealing with, and in fact, some of the times it's all of the players that you're dealing with are not going to go play professional baseball. And that's okay, because the things that players are going to get, the greatest thing and the greatest benefit players, youth players, high school, even professional players to an extent, they're going to get out of baseball and out of playing sports is the readiness, the preparedness that it's going to give them for life if the coaches do their job correctly. So every time you walk out to the field, coaches, your mindset should be saying, your mental approach, you're almost telling yourself as you're walking out there, I am here to develop hardworking, confident, disciplined human beings, and I'm going to make it fun and enjoyable along the way. It's the best of both worlds. We also talked about the hitting plan. The hitting plan that I discussed is not about swing technique. The majority of coaching out there seems to be centered around the swing technique. And while that's super important, it's not as important for youth players and even high school players as having a solid pitch selection and approach, because pitch selection is different. We talked about plan A, plan 2, or plan B. I like the plan 2 name. So we have plan A, plan 2, and plan take. Remember, plan A was, and to remember this easy, plan A is get an A+ pitch that can be driven, not strikes. You're not swinging just at strikes. That pitcher's job is to throw strikes. The hitter's job is to, in plan A, with less than 2 strikes, whether that's 3 and 1, it doesn't matter. Less than 2 strikes. Don't overcomplicate hitting. It's already so complicated. And I hear these coaches making it just so complicated. It doesn't need to be. Hitters will be better with simplicity. A good swing technique that they're working on the side or as they develop over time. But if you don't have a great pitch selection or a great approach to pitch selection, you're going to be lost up there. It doesn't matter how great. I've seen so many here. I played with so many players over the years that had just beautiful swings, but they chased bad pitches early, or they went down looking at strike 3 with 2 strikes, or they chased pitches in the dirt. They had no approach. So their swing was irrelevant, even though it was a beautiful swing. Beautiful swings with beautiful approaches equals all-star hitter. So you got to have the first thing first, and that is you got to get a good pitch. Because I told you, go back and listen to my audio article about Mike Trout. I was sitting there up close and personal. He was playing the Yankees. He was facing Tanaka. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. And he got to a 3-1 count, bases loaded, 3-1 count. His team was losing. The Angels were losing 4-0. I had a perfect view just off to the side. I was sitting in the Diamond Club, which are the kind of the front seats at Angel Stadium. I'd gotten some tickets from my best friend. He called me up that night, said, hey, I got these seats. You want to take them? I said, yeah, face value. I don't know what they would seem like, maybe a couple $100 face value. Just great seats. I'm sitting there with a buddy of mine who literally was born in the Dominican, played baseball, played in the Tigers organization in the minor leagues. And we're sitting there watching closely, and he gets up there, Mike Trout, at a 3-1 count, and Tanaka throws a split finger that bounces 3 feet in front of the plate. Mike Trout has a beautiful swing, just a beautiful swing. He swung at that pitch 3-1 that bounced 3 feet in front of the plate. Didn't even bounce on the plate. Didn't bounce in front of it. It bounced 3 feet in front of the plate. It had no chance of being in the strike zone from the time it left Tanaka's hand. I had a perfect view of it. Mike Trout is a phenomenal hitter, a phenomenal person, just a phenomenal overall athlete. And he swung swing at that 3-1 pitch that bounced 3 feet in front of the plate. And it didn't matter how beautiful his swing was because he swung at a terrible pitch. And then in the 3-2 count, on the 3-2 pitch, he took a fastball right on the inner third, did not swing. So in both cases, you have the best hitter in baseball with just a phenomenally, perfect swing, or optimal as it pretty much can get. And he looked terrible. He looked like a little leaguer up there, swinging at a ball way out in front. It wasn't even close. He missed the ball by like 3 feet. 3 feet for Mike Trout might as well be like 20 feet for a little leaguer missing the ball. And then he took the 3-2 pitch over the inner third. It wasn't even inside. It was inner third, and he took it looking. And it wasn't 99. It was 94 miles an hour on the scoreboard. So beautiful swing doesn't matter unless you go up there with a good approach. So plan A, swinging at an A+ pitch that can be driven hard. Not a strike. An A+ pitch that can be driven. An A+ hitter's pitch that can be driven hard. And that's not going to be in the spot in the zone the size of like a softball. It's going to be probably the size of a beach ball, a large beach ball. All right, and it's going to vary depending on the hitter. Some hitters like it. I was watching the Yankees playoff game last night. You get a grand slam pitch down at the bottom of the zone, bottom of the vertical rectangle, the very bottom line, and the ball went 400 and something feet. It was crushed. Mike Trout hits low pitches. Most hitters like pitches a little elevated. So your hitter's going to know what he can swing and drive hard. What they can drive hard, that's their plan A. They're swinging at those pitches and they're looking to drive it. Plan 2 again was your 2-strike approach, and go back and listen to it. Plan take was when you want to do some intel, when you really want to see something from an atypical pitcher before you commit to swinging. You're willing to sacrifice a strike if he happens to throw one to get a better timing, to get a better idea of how the ball is coming out in the release point. So remember, the hitting approach that I talk about, I think is way more important than the swing early on and even into high school. And it's not about the swing technique. When I talk about hitting approach, it's not about swing technique. It's about a more optimal pitch selection. And the last thing we talked about in episode 45 was designing optimal drills. And we talked about competition and getting competition into as many drills, healthy competitions into as many drills as possible. Now, before we get into part 1 here, you can follow me on Twitter, 8020_baseball, 8020_baseball. I'm putting out 4 or 5 times a week. I'm putting out stuff that can, things that can definitely help coaches and players get better, just little bite-sized nuggets via the Twitter platform that can help keep coaches and their mindset right when they're going out there day in and day out, or at least week in and week out, working with their teams. You can DM me, direct message me some topics you'd like to hear more about. It would be great. Also, it would be awesome if you could go leave a rating or a review on your podcast app for the show. That would be great. I don't make any money on this show. I don't put ads on this show. I don't have any ads. There's a reason I don't have ads. I want to give you as much as I can, as much good information in a small amount of time, because your time is important. With that said, let's get to it. Oh, real quick, email coachbo@8020baseball.com. You can email me coachbo@8020baseball.com. Here we go. Part 1. Successful people follow the 80-20 principle, whether they know it or not. Successful coaches follow the 80-20 principle, whether they know it or not. The great coaches that have had this great success, whether it's with the team culture or with skill development or team development, it doesn't matter. You got to know what the 80-20 principle is. And you got to, in my opinion, this goes for everything in life. You can 80-20 your entire personal life, your family. You can 80-20. You can use the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 rule at your business. In fact, if you're not using it at your business, you are leaving a lot of productivity and efficiency on the table, and probably a lot of revenue on the table. And also, you're helping less people. All right. So being a great coach, you're going to help more players. You're going to win more often. Having a great business, you're going to help and serve more people, and you're going to make more money along the way. The 80-20 principle is something that I think you should all read that book. Get the audiobook, The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch, spelled Koch. I know sometimes that last name is like Coke. It's Richard Koch, Koch. The 80-20 principle is not an exact ratio. Again, we've talked about this a little bit over the first 46 podcast episodes. The name of the podcast obviously is the 80-20 Baseball. And the significance of that name, and the reason I went with that name, is because I felt, having been in the baseball community for there'll be 35 years here, I guess, about right now. 35 years are coming up this spring, 35 years. It just shocked me. And I see this even in a lot of business. We spend so much time focused on so many different things, and we kind of think everything is equal in terms of our skill development, our team culture, or practice design. I can't tell you how many coaches I coach with that would practice a lot of things very evenly. Like we would spend 30 minutes on first and third defense, and 30 minutes on first and third offense, and then 30 minutes on ground balls, and 30 minutes on hitting, or however it shook out. It wasn't what I thought. When I'm looking at the game, I'm like, the first and third, that comes up like, especially at the high school level and above, that comes up once a game, maybe a couple times. It's not going to cost you the season. Either you're going to win league or you're not going to win league. It's not because your first and third offense or defense is bad. That's not helping you win league. Okay. If you can't hit and you can't play defense, none of that's going to save you. All right. You're hitting every single time up to the bat. Every single time you're up there, a swing can help you. Crushing a double in the gap can help you. Laying down a drag bunt can help you. Your first and third is only going to happen very, infrequently. It's not going to move the needle very much. And in some games, it's not going to move the needle at all. Rundown defense. It's fun for kids to play rundown defense. And I think youth players should definitely be doing rundown defense because it's fun and you can set up some great run. I have a great pickle drill. The kids love it. And sure, it works on throwing, receiving, tagging, running the bases, and agility and athleticism. But rundowns happen very infrequently when you think about how many ground balls your team gets, how many times your catcher blocks a ball, how many times your hitters are at bat. 50% of the game is your hitters stepping in the batter's box looking to drive the ball, or maybe, especially at the lower levels, drop down a drag bunt and test that third baseman. So the principle states that not everything delivers equally on your results. Not every action or every input has the same or equal output. And this is so important. If you're going out there, we can talk about efficiency, competition, all that's great. But if you're going out there and you're spending an equal amount of time or a comparable amount of time on all the skills and things, I guarantee you're doing it wrong. I don't even need to know exactly what you're working on because I know there really isn't much in terms of equality when it comes to actions you can practice. The biggest things are pitchers throwing and commanding the strike zone. Your pitchers are essentially throwing a pitch 50% of the game, give or take. All right, 50% of the game. I know it's not always equal. Sometimes you're out there, it seems like the innings you're on defense are super long and the innings you're on offense are super short. But over the course of a season, especially if you're doing well, they're going to be pretty even. Hopefully you're on offense a little more than you are on defense and pitching, but your pitchers are a massive part of the game. Your pitchers, the strength of your lower body of your pitchers, your torsos, the shoulder, the health of your pitchers, the delivery. So pitching is super important. Hitting is super important in terms of how much impact it has on your team's success. Just below pitching and hitting would be ground balls. And then, believe it or not, for every 2 ground balls in a baseball game, there's 1 fly ball. So that's not even, so if you're practicing fly balls equally to ground balls, it should be a 2-to-1 ratio, right? Everything should match up to the game. For example, the other day I was talking to some coaches. If you're working on throwing down to bases, catchers are working on throwing down, throwing to second, throwing to third, throwing to first. I recommended that they throw to all the bases, but I recommended that they throw 2 to second and 1 to third is a 2-1-1 ratio, 2 to second, 1 to first, and 1 to third, or 1 to third, 1 to first. Doesn't matter what order it all goes in. But the point being is catchers are going to throw the ball from receiving a pitch and throwing somebody stealing or a back pick overall much more to second base than they are to third base or first base. They're obviously good catchers are going to throw the ball back pick to first. I think that's a very valuable thing. And even back picks or throwing down to third base, although nobody's stealing first base. So that's really always going to probably be a back pick. Throwing to third base, maybe a pick. Runner gets a bigger lead than he should. I love that. I love picking to third base, whether it's a catcher or a pitcher, picking to third base with 0 outs. If there's a runner on third base with 0 outs, the chances of them scoring, especially youth baseball, even high school baseball, is pretty high. I don't know the exact number. I think over the years I've heard like they got an 80 or 75% chance of scoring with less than, So why not? At that point, the odds are so far against you, you have very little to lose. And if you practice back picks, I love picks to third. I love back picks from the catcher. But at the end of the day, the catcher is going to throws down to second base. So that's just kind of a specific example. The 80-20 principle, not all actions are equal. Not all actions are equal, okay? So I wouldn't work on drag bunts as much as hitting, all right, as swinging away. I would work more on less than 2 strikes than 2 strikes approach. And the reason is the numbers may be very similar in terms of how often a hitter hits with less than 2 strikes compared to how often they hit with 2 strikes. But I think if you take care of your less than 2 strike approach, you're going to have 2 strikes on you less and less. Not a massively different amount, but definitely less. So I would spend a little bit more time. I would spend 60% of my batting practice hitting with less than 2 strikes, or say even like a 66-33, kind of the 2/3 to 2-to-1 ratio of less than 2 strikes, plan A. And then I would do maybe a third of that with 2 strikes. And 2-strike hitting is super important. But if hitters do their job, pitchers aren't going to just dot in the lower, outside corner every single time a hitter gets up there the first 2 pitches. They're going to make a mistake, and they're going to make mistakes with 2 strikes. So you get the idea of the 80-20 principle. You got to go read that book. You got to study on this and understand that all the things that you're doing out there with your team they don't have the same impact equally, the same equal impact on the results, whether that's on the team culture or the scoreboard. Now, we talked a lot of stuff there that's going to help with the scoreboard. Obviously, team culture helps with the scoreboard, and the team culture has everything you do as a person has this. I'm telling you, almost everything you do. So whether you're working on team culture, the 80-20 principle applies. There's 20% of the things you can do are bringing you 80% of your success. All right, 20% of the things you're doing with the team culture. Now, again, the ratio is not exact. It's just kind of a parameter, kind of a nice even number, but it could be 90-10. It could be like 10% of the things you're doing to cultivate a team culture are adding up to 90% of your success with the team culture. I made a list of I think it was 17 things you can train during practice for a baseball, 17 different things, kind of broad topics, 17. And I thought the top 6 are really the only things that happen frequently almost every game. I think the top 6 were things that happen every game. Only 6 out of 17 or 6 out of 16 happen every game. So automatically right there, I would just subtract those other 10 can and spend very limited time on those because they happen every other game, every third game. And some of you guys, well, what do you get into the playoffs? And I think we have to understand as coaches, you don't need to coach everything to the T so the players can figure it out. I think the players are going to also be able to ad lib. I know they can ad lib. We all know they can ad lib a little bit. We all know they can make plays. They don't need, it's not a computer. They're not computers. In computers, you got to tell computers everything they need to do. That or you got to build an algorithm that tells them everything they need to figure out on their own in terms of like AI. But at the end of the day, computers can't function without input from the human being on every level. And even the AI, there's still a certain amount of its like input to function. Players aren't the same way. You don't need to sit there and program every single part of their game. They're going to learn on their own. These kids are smart. They're going to also figure it out on their own. They're going to ad lib and make plays whether you coached it or not. So let's give them a little bit of credit on that. We don't need to coach every single thing. And here's the biggest reason why I think coaches want to cover everything. It's an ego problem. They want to cover everything, especially those things that like first and third offenses and defenses and that and bunt defenses. They want to cover that because they think that that makes them look bad as a coach. At the end of the day, if you value the right things, you're going to value hitting, you're going to value pitching, you're going to value your catcher, and you're going to value ground balls and then obviously the fly balls. But I think players learn to catch fly balls a lot more frequently because that's something they do on their own. That's something that also with other sports like football and things like that the ball's coming down, or even like a volleyball. Hitting ground balls is fielding ground balls is something that's a little unique. Players aren't out there throwing each other a lot of ground balls to each other. You know, it's not something they just go out and start doing as much, but they do play catch a lot, and they do play catch from a long distance, which in a sense mimics the fly ball. So we could get on a lot of this in the detail, but just hear me out. The 80-20 principle is so important. When you look at your practice plan, when you look at what you're coaching, you want to spend more time, the most time on the things that happen the most in the game. Spend your time on the things that happen the most in the game. All right, part 2, youth pitchers, high school pitchers. Please, 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 coaches coaching youth pitchers and high school pitchers, which is the majority of all pitching coaches and coaches. Youth coaches, high school coaches, pitchers, youth or high school pitchers. Stay away from doing everything you see these MLB pitchers working on. The big thing in the MLB pitchers, professional pitchers, even college pitchers now is spin rate and having different pitches and pitch design. I'm telling you, you should spend very little time on that unless you perfect it. Very, very, very few ever dial in their lower half. They very rarely dial in their rotation, their hips, their legs, their direction, their momentum, their center of gravity control, their torso, their posture, their head control. Everybody gets caught up in where the hands are and the fingers and the release point and what the ball's doing and all that. And that for major league pitchers is fine because they've worked on their lower body strength. They've worked their mechanics. And what's interesting is major league pitchers could absolutely spend way more time on their lower half. In fact, the pitchers that spent the most time perfecting their lower halves or had the best lower halves had the best careers. They're the Hall of Famers. Go look at Pedro Martinez. Go look at Mariano Rivera. Go look at Greg Maddux. Go look at all of them. My point being is all the pitch design and all that varies a lot amongst pitchers. But what doesn't vary is the lower half. The lower half up through the posture, up through the hip hinge, up through the momentum, up through the center of gravity. Start at the ground. Pitchers, youth pitchers, don't get caught up in this grip. I couldn't tell you how many times pitchers would be like, hey, show me another grip for this, or can I throw this pitch? Can I add a pitch? And I just stop them. Work on that direction, striding straight to the plate. Work on getting your lower half. I would rather you spend all that extra time on getting the legs and hips stronger. All right, getting the torso and the abdominal muscles, whether it's the rotational abdominal muscles, the transverse abdominal muscles, or just your simple 6-pack right in the middle, the 8-pack muscle. Get your muscles, your lower back muscles stronger, get your posture better, keep your head still. All of that's going to pay off way more than pitch design and grips and spin rate and all that. In fact, that's probably all going to take care of itself for the most part. I'm telling you, that's great for the professional pitchers that have perfected a lot of the lower half stuff and a lot of the middle level stuff, the torso and the spine angle and the hip angles and stuff like that, and their abdominal strength. Pitchers at the lower levels need to focus on the ground up. You got to get better from the ground up. Don't get caught up in what the major leaguers are doing. Now, there's definitely some things we want to copy. Like I think the launch angle, swinging, driving the ball and driving it like at a 10 degree or a 15. I think ideally if you could drive every batting practice ball hard between like 15 and 25 degrees would be awesome. That would be like my thing. I would just be like, hey, let's get to 20 degrees and just crush as many pitches at 20 degrees as we can. The major leaguers do it. I would definitely have all my little leaguers do it. But there's certain things that come about a little bit slower depending on skill acquisition and body development and maturity and strength. And I'm telling you, we got to be careful with these youth pitchers. And this has been happening for years. I started working with pitchers almost 20 years ago. They get caught up in grips and release points and this and throwing side and having different pitches and throwing 3 types of breaking balls. What's going to give you the most bang for your buck, what's really going to make a great pitcher and not a great pitcher is what they're doing with their lower half up. All right. Not out with their fingertips. So let's spend a lot less time on that that and a lot more time working on striding to the plate, getting the momentum, the hip hinge on the backside, the front side hip out in front a little bit more. Basically, just go copy the mechanics of Maddox, Mariano Rivera, Pedro Martinez. Those are awesome. Roger Clemens. Those guys are perfect examples. Randy Johnson. Those guys are great examples to follow. And at the end of the day, all the great pitchers of all time never had 1,000 pitches. They never had I know Darvish is finally having a really good year. A big part of that, I think, was he had to dial in his lower half. His lower half is awesome this year. It's not that he has different pitches working differently. He's throwing the exact same amount of pitches. In my opinion, he throws too many different pitches. But at the professional level, you have so much extra time to work on all those pitches. It works out insofar as you have his lower half is phenomenal. He got better. He has such a phenomenal year this year because his lower half is phenomenal. His leg usage, his balance, his torso angle, his hips out in front, driving down the mound, his hip hinge, his posture is phenomenal this year. That's what made him dominate this year. That's what got him to dominate, not because of his 7 different pitches that he throws. So let's keep that in mind. Now, part 3, which is actually section 7, ingredient 7 from my drill mastery guide. So I'm going to read straight from section 7. Here we go. The key question you need to ask for this section is, do the players show enjoyment for the drill? Fun is the 7th ingredient. Fun. Now, and this is the only ingredient that could also be perceived as a byproduct of competition, of efficiency. You want to make your drill fun, be more efficient, and infuse competition as often as you can. All right, here we go. Reading from the Drill Mastery Guide, section 7, how to get your drill more fun. The number one goal as the coach is to create a pleasant and safe environment for all players. Each player should look forward to practice. While coaches are not responsible for every player's attitude, coaches must do their part by creating training drills that are fun. An easy and fast way to be sure that the players are enjoying the practice drill is to observe their responses when the drill is brought up, or when the coach says, hey, we're going to do this drill. Observe their responses. They're not all going to be rah, all right? It may be a challenging drill. They're like, ooh, it's going to be tough. All right, doesn't mean it's bad. If there are unanimous smiles, it is very likely the players enjoy that drill. The next best indicator is the vibe of the drill. Actually, probably the best indicator is the vibe of the drill. Players that appear focused are probably enjoying the drill. Likewise, if players are training hard, they are likely enjoying the drill. If they look bored, well, then most likely they are bored, and the drill likely needs to be more fun. Players will undoubtedly enjoy some drills more than others. That's to be expected. Do not eliminate a drill just because the players don't jump for joy when you announce it. And similarly, don't throw a drill in the trash just because the players aren't hooting and hollering the entire time. If players outwardly demonstrate excitement, that's a sure sign of having fun. But other training drills may have a restrained vibe, requiring the coach to observe and discern whether the players are focused and working hard or disinterested and bored. The body language and eyes say a lot. A lethargic posture or eyes staring off into the distance are reasonable indications that the player is bored. If only one player shows disinterest, a follow-up chat with that player may uncover an unrelated issue, an issue not related to the drill. Goofing off is not an ingredient for an enjoyable drill. It's just not. It's not an ingredient for an enjoyable drill recipe. Goofing off is something different than having fun. A fun drill needs baseball players, not circus clowns. At 80/20 Baseball, we use the slogan, focused fun to help our practices stay in line with our top goals. We do like to see that players keep things light and loose, but we prefer the goofballs save their acts for intermission or after the show. An efficient drill is always a sure bet to be more fun, like we talked about. An efficient drill is always a sure bet to be more fun. Players love action. If the players can accurately describe the clouds in the sky, the drill, unfortunately, is likely moving slower than the clouds. Keep the action moving. Avoid letting a stale drill drag on. Some drills will leave the players begging for more even after 45 minutes, and some drills will likely need to be halted after just 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Some drills start like a tasty carbonated beverage only to flatten out. Keep an eye out on the drill that's losing its fizz and be prepared to move on, or be prepared to adjust it, infuse it with some competition, or get it moving faster. If the drill is going well, write it out a little bit, but never overextend the best drills. And unless it's the last practice of the season, always leave the players wanting a little more. As discussed in the previous section, adding a competitive element, like we said with efficiency, adding efficiency almost always adds fun. If you can have an efficient and competitive drill, fun is almost undoubtedly going to be there. If in doubt, make it a competition or make it more efficient. If a specific skill needs to be trained and the drill or drills for that skill have not yet gained the player's interest, gamify it. Keep the drills fresh. Youth coaches should have 3 to 4 main practice plans that can be rotated. High school and college teams should have 4 to 5 base practice plans. The reason you don't want to have more than that, in my opinion, is because setting up the drill, explaining the drill, understanding the drill, perfecting the drill and the moves and the technique, the efficiency of the drill, and your environment only facilitate, for the most part, or only should require or only can accommodate that amount of practice plans. All right. The practice plans may have some similarities, like a standard warm-up routine, but the main entrees should vary. Like a radio DJ, have the go-to hits, just don't play them every set. Even the greatest tracks of all time can be overplayed. A super fun training method is to go outside of the box and use activities from outside baseball or outside the sport you're coaching. Say you want the players to learn to throw more accurately. Get out the gator skin dodgeballs, Google it, gator skin dodgeballs, and let them play the all-time favorite PE game, their all-time favorite PE game, dodgeball. Although I'll warn you now, you better have a bulletproof exit strategy, because the players, they're not going to want to stop. How about a game of ultimate football to build arm strength and athleticism? How about taking the team to the driving range to let them whack a bucket of golf balls? Hitting a golf ball and hitting a baseball have many similarities. Have you ever seen Mike Trout hit a golf ball? Winning baseball games is fun, but why not also make the training process as fun as possible? If players discover enjoyment during the training process at a young age, they'll likely find a similar enjoyment later in life while working through the daily grind of all the things that come along with being an adult. So to sum it up, to encapsulate it all, every drill is not going to be a blast. Some are going to be demanding more than others in terms of just, these kids are so focused, and maybe the intensity's there, the competition's there, that they're so focused that, it doesn't look like they're having just an amazingly, joyful time, and that's okay. But they should be enjoying it. They should look forward to drills. They shouldn't just shrug their shoulders and drop their head to the side when you tell them they're going to do a drill. Doesn't mean they're all going to be jumping for joy when you tell them. That's not the point. It's not about pleasing them all the time. It's about doing what's best for them. Keep the drill competitive. First off, keep every drill efficient. Keep it moving safely, but keep it moving fast. Add as many competitions as you can into it. Maybe go outside of baseball. Add some dodgeball with those gator skin balls. Go to the driving range. Play some ultimate football. All right, these are some out-of-the-box strategies, out-of-the-box activities that can work towards the same goals and work to refining the same skills, but a lot of fun. And lastly, if you have some awesome drills, don't use them every practice, but put them through the rotation like a DJ with the great hits. Move them through the rotation. Keep those. You don't need a million drills. You can always subtract drills. If you find one that's more fun, then get rid of the other drill. Stick with the best drills. All right, you guys, this has been Coach Bo here at 80/20 Baseball. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to cut it off right there until we see each other next Tuesday when I put out the next episode, episode 47. Speaking of episode 47, we're going to talk about absolute awesome way to make your coaching better, your practices better. And it's a simple strategy that's going to really, really help out. And it helps out. In fact, all of you are already doing it every day of your life, whether you know it or not. Now we're going to infuse it and use it even more during our training sessions to get more out of it and to have higher quality practices. So you're not going to want to miss episode 47. And until then, take care of your health, take care of your family, and take these strategies out to the field and make the baseball community a better place. Take care, guys. Bye.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.